So welcome to 9.6. We're going to finally put parentheses into our expressions. Now, parentheses is not the first step of order of operations, although many teachers say it is. The first step is called groups, because there are other ways besides parentheses to make groups of numbers or variables together. So let's see if we already know how to use parentheses. Right, you do inside parentheses first. 3 plus 5 is 8. And 8 times 9 is 72. You do inside parentheses first, so 3 plus 5 is 8. 9 times 8, still the same answer, 72. You do inside parentheses first, 3 plus 5 is 8. 72 divided by 8. 8 times 9 is 72. By the way, notice the time symbol and the variable x are very different looking. Here, x is 7, so we have 7 minus 2, and that's 7 minus 2 times 6. It's a way to write that. 7 minus 2, inside parentheses, 5. 5 times 6, and I can put the parentheses around either one. 5 times 6 is 30. Here the 6 is in front. 6 times 7 minus 2. 7 minus 2 is 5. 5 times 6, still 30. 30 divided by 7 minus 2. 7 minus 2 is still 5. 30 divided by 5 equals 6. Parentheses come first. All right, so why do we need parentheses? Well, if you want, right, the rules say you always do your adding and subtracting last. Well, what if you don't want to do it last? Are there situations where you don't want to do it last? Yes. So you put them in parentheses and they jump from last to first. Okay. Now, if you haven't seen this in English class, that means example given. So one example of a grouping symbol is parentheses. But there are also these things called brackets. You're also going to find out, well, absolute value also makes a group, right? We talked about that in a previous lesson, that they group things together, like parentheses. There are other ways to make groups. All right, but there's no parentheses in the first one. So in the first one, you have to multiply first and do 5 times 7 is 35, and then add the 4. But what if I want to do the 4 plus 5 first, for whatever reason? Then I have to put it in parentheses. Then that shifts it from last to first. Now you do that first, and you get a totally different answer. Same thing here, right? This one is 8 plus 9. 3 squared is 9. You do your exponent first and get 17. 9 plus 8. Here you do the 8 plus 3 first, get 11. Then 11 squared. Now it's not negative, so you don't need to keep the parentheses, but 11 times 11 is 121. All right, so there are all the steps. Step 1 is groups. Then you get all your parentheses done. Then you do your exponents. Then you do your divide and multiply. Then you do your add and subtract. Notice you have no tiebreakers in steps 1 and 2, because if there is more than one group, it doesn't matter which group you do first, as long as you get all your groups done. If there's more than one exponent in a problem, as long as you get your exponents all done, it doesn't matter which one you do first. The tiebreakers are for the last 2 steps. That's where left or right comes into play, and the only place. So we're going to get our group done here first, 14. We can do this, so we've got that done. We can do 2 cubed, which is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. Okay, we got both step 1 done, then step 2, and I'm going to rewrite. So we have 5 times 8 minus 14. So now that we've got our groups and exponents done, we have to follow the rules. 5 times 8 is 40. 40 minus 14 has a little regrouping in it, and it's 26. Truthfully, almost all the mistakes in order of operations come in step 3 and 4. Most people get the groups and exponent part correct. That's where you need to be careful. All right, so now let's look at this. So we have to do the 1 plus 4 first. So we're going to do that. So we have negative 3. When you don't see an operation, that means multiply. So we have negative 3. I'm going to put the multiplication dot times 5. And don't forget this little exponent. So we've done here. The parentheses are gone, although you could put them. It wouldn't really matter here. But they're gone. That's the whole point of doing the 1 plus 4. And so now what do? You have to do your 5 squared next. Right? And some people forget to write these little numbers and they mess up the problem that way, but you have to do 5 squared next. 5 times 5 is 25. Then you multiply negative 3 times 25, negative 75. Order of operations. You do your parentheses or groups, you do your exponents, then you get to all your other stuff. Okay, let's look at this monster. So we have negative 9 plus 3 there, which is negative 6. I'm going to leave, because it's a negative base, I'm going to put it in parentheses, and I'm going to keep my 10 here. We have to do 8 plus 2 is 10, and this is minus 4 times 10. Now we have negative 6 there, squared, so we have to do that. Negative 6 times negative 6, positive 36. All right, so we got all our groups and exponents done. Now we've multiplied 10 times 36, 360. 4 times 10 is 40. 360 minus 40, you could do in your head, but it is 320. All right, so there's some brackets. Now, brackets, why do we use brackets? Because I could have written this like this. But then you get parentheses next to your parentheses, and that can be a little tough to read. And sometimes you'll see people do that, and they'll have like 3 or 4 parentheses in a row, because they have parentheses inside their parentheses inside their parentheses. So one way to make it nicer looking is to use brackets. It means no difference mathematically. So we're going to do inside our bracket, inside, that's still a grouping symbol. 15 plus negative 9 is positive 6. So this is 7 times, and we can now change it to just parentheses, 7 times 6. Right? So we got our grouping symbol done. These parentheses here aren't making a group. This is another reason why first step is parentheses. Right? These are parentheses, but they're not grouping anything. There's only one thing in there. What they are doing is telling us to do negative 6 times negative 6, which is positive 36. So that's positive 36. We have 7 times 6. We still have this minus sign we haven't gotten dealt with. Okay, now we have multiplying. We have to do that first. 42 minus 36. And let's just come over here and regroup that, and we get positive 6. Okay, all grouping symbols, then exponents, then all your multiplying and dividing, adding and subtracting. All right, so we're going to do it with variable expressions. So this is 4 times 7 minus negative 3. Now, notice I put parentheses next to my parentheses. You're totally allowed, but if you don't like that, you could also switch them to brackets. Not here. I don't think it's that confusing. I'm going to leave parentheses. All right, so 7 minus negative 3 is the same as 7 plus 3, 10. So I have 4 times 10 squared. This is usually a place of mistake in tests. People want to do 4 times 10. No. After you do your grouping symbols, you have to do this exponent. 10 times 10, 100. And then it's 4 times 100, 400. All right, so what number's out there? That's a negative 1. Okay, we'll talk about that. Or let's leave it for now. So 1 plus negative 3, that whole thing squared. So 1 plus negative 3 is negative 2, so we have that negative sign out there. So we have a negative 2, because it's negative base. I'm going to leave it in parentheses. Negative 2 squared. Negative 2 squared is negative 2 times negative 2, positive 4. All of that is positive 4, but this negative, and you can think of it as negative 1 times 4, or just that it's a negative 4. Right? That was a negative out there. And you know it's a negative, not a minus. If there was something there, like a 5, then it's a minus. It's not a difference in size. It's that there's nothing in front of it, so it must be a negative, not a minus. So that is negative 4. Negative 2 squared is positive 4, but then you had that extra negative out there. All right, so now you're going to have more than one thing inside your parentheses. And it's entirely logical that while you're in here, you still have to multiply before you add. Rules are rules in math, but students, for some reason, when they're in parentheses, think they don't have to follow the rules. They do. So 2 times 4 is 8, and 5 plus 8 is 13. So you get all that done, you get 13 squared. 13 times 13 ends up being 3 times 1. There was no carry. I wanted to carry something there, but there wasn't. Is 169 is the answer. So let's do this. We have 4 times 2 times 4 squared minus 29, that whole thing squared. So you do all of this first inside here. You have to do the 4 squared first, which is 16. Then you have to do the 2 times 16 next. 2 times 16 is 32. So then you have to do 32 minus 29. After all that work, it becomes 3. Now you've done all that work, it's very easy to forget. There was still a 2 there and a 4 there. So we're 4 times 3 squared. What do you have to do next? You have to do the exponent next. 3 squared is 9. 4 times 9 is 36. Now, one grouping symbol that I hadn't talked about is this. This is a grouping symbol. Fraction bar is a grouping symbol. So when you see this, like x, all right, x, we'll talk more about this. Well, let's use numbers. So you see this, it's like there's parentheses around the top and bottom. You're going to do your division last. Yeah. If I wrote this, right, if I write this, all right, you would do the multiplying and the adding first, and then you would do your dividing last. That's what it's like, right? Now, if I took the parentheses away, you definitely wouldn't do the division first. You'd do this division last, right? You would do this adding over here last. But it is a rule that there are implied parentheses around the top and bottom of a fraction. So you do 5 times 6 and 3 plus 7 first. 30 divided by 10 goes last, and that's 3. That's the rules. Okay, so you do 12 plus 9 first and get 21. 8 minus 1 gets 7, and that is 3. It's like there were parentheses around that. So let's do this with variable expressions. X is 2, y is 4. 18 minus 2, right? It's like these are in parentheses, so we're going to do them first. 18 minus 2 is 16. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 16 divided by 2 is 8. This is 8 times y, 8 times 4 over, now that's not a multiplication symbol, that's why this one's here. That's at letter x. So that's 2 times 2 times 4. On the top is 8 times 4, 32. On the bottom is 2 times 2 is 4, times 4 is 16. 32 divided by 16. 16 goes into 32 exactly 2 times. Now, maybe some of you noticed, you could have canceled these 4s, right, and gotten 8 over 4, which is also 2. And you could have actually simplified this and made that 4 over 2. I just felt it was easier just to multiply across and divide. So let's practice. Right, so we're going to do 6 minus 4 first, and then we're going to do 2. We have 32 divided by 2 cubed. 2 cubed, we've done a bunch, is 8. 32 divided by 8, 4. We have to follow the rules while we're in the grouping symbol. 18 divided by 3 is 6. 12 plus 6 is 18. So it's 5 times 18 plus 7. 5 times 18. A little trick, by the way. 18 times 10 is 180. Can you do 180 divided by 2? In your head? Because if you can, you don't have to do the work I'm doing, because the 5 times table is always the 10 times table divided by 2. It's half the 10 times table. 90 plus 7 is 97. Here it's negative 3 times 2 times 9 minus 8, that whole thing squared. We have to follow the rules. 2 times 9 is 18. 18 minus 8, 10. So it's negative 3 times 10 squared. Don't forget that. We have to do the 10 squared next, which is 100. Negative 3 times 100, negative 300. This is 2x, which is 2 times 9, x is 9, plus 2, over 36 divided by 9. All right, so we have to follow the rules. 2 times 9 is 18, plus 2 is 20. 36 divided by 9 is 4, and this comes out 5. All right, so this is 7 minus 23, which is what? Negative 16 squared divided by 0. Now, I'm not going to go over and do 16 times 16. Why not? Because you cannot divide by 0. This is undefined. It doesn't matter what number, right? This is divide by 0. This is also this. Never allowed to have 0, divide by 0. Never allowed to have 0 out there. Never allowed to have 0 in your denominator. It is undefined, we say. There is no definition. There is no answer. Good luck on the homework.